Good afternoon. I'm going to call this meeting of the General Laws, Housing and Consumer Protection Subcommittee meeting to order. It looks like we have all the same members that we had on the subcommittee last year, back again this year, so I'm going to skip the introductions. I do have one introduction though before we get to the agenda. Elizabeth Pollen with the Housing Commission has asked to have just a minute or so to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what she does. This is going to be an important person to know because we are in an odd year, which means that if we get bills that are on a really good start to something or have a really good idea but haven't quite made it there, what may end up happening to a lot of those bills is they won't be able to be carried over this year because we don't have the opportunity to do Rule 22, but you may find that your bill is very gently laid on the table with the request that Uber Chair Bulova send a letter to the Housing Commission and ask them to look at your bill. So in case that would happen to your bill, I want you guys to understand that as a positive outcome, and Elizabeth's going to tell us a little bit about the Housing Commission. So, Elizabeth.
I think Delegate Simon just said my piece for me, so I'll be about 30 seconds. I'm Elizabeth Pollen, Director of Virginia Housing Commission, and we're an independent, bipartisan legislative commission, and we study, discuss, and make recommendations on housing and housing-related issues, such as zoning. We meet during the interim, and our agenda is formed through bills recommended by the General Assembly, y'all, as well as organic topics that are pertinent to housing all Virginians. The Commission perennially emphasizes affordable housing needs. Bills referred to the Commission are given a thorough overview, and frequently a stronger compromise bill is produced for the next legislative session. Work groups comprised of stakeholders from industries such as the home builders, finance industry, the nonprofit sector, governmental entities, both local and statewide, among others, provide their expertise to assist and allow the legislators a full understanding of the issues. Please access the Commission's website at vhc.virginia.gov for more information, or contact me directly if you'd like your bill to be strengthened during the interim. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pollen, and thank you for that. And I do agree that again, the goal in sending bills to the Housing Commission is to actually make them stronger bills and help you and help achieve the policy aims of your bill in the most effective way possible. So again, should your bill end up suffering that fate, it's really not suffering. I'd like you to think of it as a positive outcome for everybody. Always. One other reminder briefly on that. Again, the way that the Housing Commission gets their bills is at this time of year, or at this point in the cycle, it has to be a letter from the chairman. The subcommittee can ask the chairman to send the letters, but ultimately it's up to the patron to follow up with the chairman and make sure that that gets done and maybe that the letter says what you want it to say. So I would encourage you all, should that happen, that you make sure you communicate with the chairman's office about how that's going to happen. So, because we did have somebody at a meeting the other day who had thought it was an automatic process and was surprised that something they thought was referred somewhere didn't actually get there. So, first on our agenda, we have Delegate Hernandez, House Bill 1606, Claims to Unclaimed Property, Authority of Administrator. Delegate Hernandez, please tell us what your bill does.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is HB 1606, or as I have been calling it, the Cash Now Act, because it seeks to advance major reforms to Virginia's approach to unclaimed property with the goal of returning a heck of a lot more money to rightful owners across Virginia. So just as a primer, unclaimed property can take a lot of different forms. It can be utility deposits, refunded checks. It can be money in forgotten bank accounts and checking accounts. And 1 in 4 Virginians are estimated to have some unclaimed property. Current law says you have to file a claim to get what is legally yours. You go to vamoneysearch.gov, and I'll repeat that to committee members and also members of the public, because you might be pleasantly surprised. That's vamoneysearch.gov. Type in your information, find a match, submit a claim, wait for your money to arrive, and that's all great. The thing is, especially at a time when families are struggling to make ends meet and afford the high cost of living, we think we can do better than that. And so we have been working with the Treasury Department for the better part of 7-8 months on the Cash Now Act. And so this bill will do a couple of things. It will allow the Treasury Department to automatically send out payments of unclaimed property when there are 3 conditions that are met. Number 1, there's a single owner. Number two, we can verify the identity and the location of that owner. And number three, the value of the unclaimed property is $5,000 or less. When all those conditions are met, the Treasury Department would just be able to send out a check and brighten someone's day, I would like to think. There are a lot of other states that already do this: North Carolina, West Virginia, Wisconsin, New York, Illinois. We'll also say it's win-win not just for Virginians, but also for the agency, because they can use their limited resources with staff on the more complex claims while clearing out the sort of run-of-the-mill easy cases. So I did want to acknowledge the Secretary of the Treasury who's here, David Richardson, who met with me in a little coffee shop in Norfolk last summer when this idea was just a little concept, and now it's here a bill. So I wanted to see, Mr. Chair, if you'd allow him a moment or two to say a word about this bill, if you'd like.
Sure, we're happy to hear from the Secretary. This is a one-sentence bill, but let's go ahead.
We tried to make the bill longer, but we ran out of time.
Running out of time. Running out of time. I get it.
I'm Dave Richardson. I'm not the secretary of anything. I'm just the state treasurer. So I don't want to offend Secretary Cummings. We've been working with the delegate here for quite some time now, and are very much in favor of this bill. Our goal is to try to reunite as many dollars with taxpayers as possible, and this allows us to do it much more efficiently. We have a system right now that allows people to file claims that without, that as long as your social security number, your address, and your name matches, it's called our fast track system, you can get a check. So we're just extending that to people that don't even submit a claim, just skipping over that step. And we're very optimistic that we're going to be able to send out thousands of checks as soon as we get this thing up and running. So we're very much in favor of this.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Any questions from members of the subcommittee? Delegate Price.
Shocker. Mr. Treasurer, I just had a question. So there's a few bills that I think were going on about mail theft and some of the things that folks are worried about. Are there any considerations that you all take prior to sending out the checks for, say, for instance, like when I'm expecting a package, I know if I'm not expecting it, I just want to make sure that there are steps, whether it's certified mail or just something that can help protect to get it to that person, knowing that they may not be on the lookout for it.
Yes, I should have mentioned that actually. We do send out a letter. We will send out a letter first, and then we'll wait 60 days, and if the letter doesn't come back as undeliverable, then we'll send a check. So it's hopefully that'll filter out a lot of bad mailings. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That was an excellent question. Any other questions from members of the subcommittee? Anybody in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Matt Bruning with the Virginia Bankers Association, want to thank Delegate Hernandez and the Treasury Department on working on this bill. Obviously, banks on the front end do a lot of escheatment into this area, but it's nice to see the money easily going back into consumers' pockets and hopefully into their bank account. And we appreciate Delegate Price knowing about our mail theft bill.
There you go. Win-win.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the bill? There's nobody online to speak on this bill. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Seeing none, this committee operates by motion.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that the bill report. The clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their votes on the electronic voting board. The clerk will close the roll. Your bill reports 8-0 unanimously.
I thank
you, Delegate Hernandez. All right, before we get too much further in, because I see a couple people were here, and I want to make sure we take care of two little administrative items so that folks can feel comfortable leaving if they want to. At the request of the patron, Delegate Converse Fowler, I'd entertain a motion to strike House Bill 1689 from the docket.
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded that we strike House Bill 1689 from the docket. That's a recorded vote. The clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their votes. And the clerk will close the roll, and that bill is recommended for striking from the docket by a vote of 8-0. And then House Bill 1709 from Delegate Gardner. She's asked that we take that bill by for the week, or by for the day, which technically means till next week. Is there a motion to take 1709 by?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we take the bill by. As many as favor that motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that motion carries, and we are back to Delegate McClure's House Bill 1623.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I have a line amendment that makes clear the eviction diversion program is permissive for general district courts in the Commonwealth.
All right, Council, do you have the amendment? Are you able to report it so that we can get a motion on it?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. On line 17, after the program in parentheses, strike the remainder of line 17 and through courts on line 18 and insert a period. On line 18, after Richmond, which is stricken through, insert the program may be implemented by any general district court. So that sentence would read, the program may be implemented by any general district court of the Commonwealth.
Okay. All right, the amendment's been moved and properly seconded. As many as favor adoption of the amendment will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the amendment is now before us. And I think what you say is now, but mostly what the difference is we use the word may, which makes this completely permissive. Is that right?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, Delegate McClure.
And then that was the wish of the folks who voted in the Housing Commission. Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, HB 1623 expands and makes permanent the eviction diversion court program within the General District Court to make the program available to any locality who wishes to participate. And we've had some localities reach out and express interest. And so the eviction diversion court pilot program was created by the Virginia Housing Commission and enacted in July 2020 to provide a solution to lessen Virginia's high eviction rates. The pilot program was effective in preventing the eviction of tenants who utilized it, but it's set to expire on July 1st of this year. And so since evictions are trending toward the return to a pre-pandemic levels in many Virginia localities, we believe that the program should be made permanent because it's proven to be an effective tool to reduce the number of evictions in the Commonwealth. And so the program does not incur any cost to the court system. It has no fiscal impact, and the necessary forms and training processes are already integrated with the court system's existing resources. And so this bill was requested and unanimously endorsed by the Virginia Housing Commission.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the subcommittee for Delegate McClure? Anybody in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Please come forward. Ms. Pollen?
This is a Virginia Housing Commission bill. The original pilot program was a Virginia Housing Commission pilot. It has been successful. There's an 85% success rate among those who've used the program so far, and we've heard from several localities around the state that would like to implement it, and we hope that you all will vote positively toward it so that any locality that wishes to implement it will be able to do so.
Oh, very good. Yeah, this is a success story. Bills for pilot programs always, it's a sort of a good sort of way to dip your toe, and it's nice when they actually work, and then we get to do
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Work of taking them statewide. Anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Seeing none, the committee operates by motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the bill report as amended. So report with amendments. The clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their votes. The clerk will close the roll. Delegate McClure, your bill with amendments is recommended for reporting by a vote of 8-0.
Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
Chair, members of the subcommittee.
All right, Delegate Hayes, you have House Bill 1640. I almost didn't see you there, by the way, members. If you guys stay, if you one side or the other, make sure I'll know you're here. Make sure you get called on.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. You have before you House Bill 1640. Mr. Chair, you may be recalling the bill from 1606, Delegate Hernandez, and the help that's going to happen through that bill in making sure that the people's money is returned to them. The other part of that conversation is making sure that our agencies are sharing the pertinent information, and they're required to do so in that search to find the owners of said properties. And so what this bill will do is require Department of Treasury to work along with Department of Taxation in that effort to find the owners of the property.
All right, any questions from members of the subcommittee about what this bill does? It sounds like this is sort of works in tandem. We now have an automatic process for sending money out, but we only can send it out when we know who the folks are, and this would instruct the tax folks that they're to share information to help facilitate that process.
Shall being the operative word.
Got it. Delegate Coiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does this bill have a fiscal impact that we know of?
I didn't see one online or in my notes. Delegate Hayes, have you heard anything about a fiscal impact?
I know of no fiscal impact at this time. I'm looking here through my notes. On this bill, I know of no fiscal impact at this time.
Mr. Chairman?
Delegate Coiner.
Practicing in the area of real estate law and trying to track down for quiet title and other actions in court, and when we go before judges and they ask us what due diligence we used and trying to locate prior landowners, it takes a lot of time. My one concern in this is with how many individuals with the unclaimed property, whether or not the administrator is staffed properly to exercise due diligence in every case, because it doesn't seem the shall include is that's the only thing they have to do is to see if tax has the information. Doing that may be part of their shall be part of their due diligence, but it's not necessarily all of it. So, I might recommend maybe some narrowing of our expectations unless there's money for funds for additional staff, just knowing, if you're ever challenged on this, whether or not you exercise due diligence, what we meant. Just my thoughts, Mr. Chairman.
Right, hold on, Delegate Coiner, I'm sorry. There is, I don't know how recently, looks like at 4:20 p.m. yesterday, a fiscal impact statement popped up. So these things, so it's a good question. Let me just, if you give us a second, I didn't want to mislead the committee. And again, you probably didn't notice it because, like I said, it just popped up late yesterday afternoon.
I mean no harm, Mr. Chairman.
No, just before it's worth, in case you haven't seen it before, the budget amendment necessary, the answer is no. No budget amendment is necessary. Fiscal analysis, the fiscal impact of this bill is indeterminate and may reduce revenue if the literary fund results in the location of additional owners. In other words, as we give money back to people, we're going to have less money in the treasury because we're giving it back to its owner. So that would seem to be the only impact noted by the Department of Management and Budget. All right?
So, Mr. Chair, if I might.
Yes.
So the key focus on that statement that you just made of removing money from the treasury, fundamentally, the reason we've come up with this notion, this idea, working along with Delegate Hernandez, is because this money doesn't belong to the state from the first place. It shouldn't end up in the treasury. Hopefully, we take the position that this is the people's $3 billion that belong to them. So we want to make it easy in every way that we can to return the money back.
I notice the state treasurer is still here. Sir, do you have a position on this bill?
You don't have a position.
We're not opposed to this bill. We already there's a code section that exists already that authorizes tax to share this information with us. It doesn't hurt anything to have this bill, but it's part of our due diligence. It's something that we would do, but primarily we find it actually more effective to use the vendor that we use for our fast track is much more efficient in doing this. Coordinating with tax is certainly, it wouldn't be bad to have it in our arsenal, but I'm not sure that would be a robust piece of it because it's not as effective as what we're already using.
But you wouldn't see it as a burden on your office at all to be required to do this?
No, if we decided that this was a more efficient way to go and the vendor wasn't doing what we wanted him to do, then we would ratchet it up with tax, and then we might have a fiscal impact if we needed to hire people to do that, but certainly not in the short term.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for members of the subcommittee, for the patron, or for the state treasurer? All right. Any members in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone in opposition? All right. Committee operates by motion. It's been moved and seconded the bill report. The clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their votes. The clerk will close the roll. Delegate Hayes, your bill reports by a vote of 8-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Don't get too used to this, everybody. This is usually not such a nice committee. It's early. All right, I'm going to skip Delegate Thomas because he's a member of the subcommittee. I see we got Delegate Wright here. Delegate Wright, you have House Bill 1671.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. House Bill 1671 amends the Virginia Real Estate Timeshare Act concerning record keeping by resellers. And I'll give you a description of how it currently is done and what this change would make. Currently, timeshare resellers must keep a copy of current government-issued photographic identification, such as driver's licenses, passports, or military identification cards. That is provided by the lead dealer to the reseller. This would change by the proposed change removes the requirement for timeshare resellers to retain copies of government-issued photographic identification of the lead dealer who provided the contact information. The legislation offers key benefits for both consumers and timeshare resellers by enhancing privacy protections and reducing liability. By removing the requirement for resellers to retain copies of government-issued photo IDs, the risk of identity theft is minimized, and resellers are relieved of the burden of safeguarding sensitive personal information. The change also ensures compliance with legal restrictions on photocopying certain IDs, such as military identification, and it simplifies business operations by reducing unnecessary record keeping. I'll be glad to answer any question the committee may have and ask that you would look favorably upon the bill.
Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? So my question, I guess, is why do we have to retain this? What's the deal with the 5-year? It's like a statute of limitations for something that we need to have this available for if there's a claim, if somebody wants to challenge the validity of their timeshare, or why are we keeping this stuff to begin with? Do you know?
Okay. Jennifer Slay from DPOR is here, can probably answer that question.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. In summary, that's how it was written, 5 years. No magic behind the glass. It was 5 years. I would add that we went back, so as you all probably know, DPOR does licensing and compliance. We have investigators across the state of Virginia. When we were looking at this bill, one, to protect health, safety, and welfare, but two, to ease the burden on the regulators. We went back 10 years. We said, okay, of all of the investigations we've done that may be in any way related to this, have we ever once used a photocopy of an ID? And the answer was no, not at all. Thank you.
Yeah, one quick more question for you. So what is it that you're investigating? What would cause you to come look at somebody's file? So somebody says, essentially, I don't own this timeshare. I don't know where this came from. I didn't sign it. This isn't me. Is that what you're, somebody just making, what is it, what kind of things are you, I just don't know enough about timeshares, I guess, but what are you investigating when you're looking at these files? What are the accusations that are trying to be, what's trying to be solved?
It could be anything under the sun, really. I mean, misrepresentation, failure to disclose. I can get back to you. I can get you more details.
The reason I ask is because we have a problem in my industry, and I think, according to my experiences too, we have things like seller impersonation fraud, right? So if somebody came to my office and said, I want to sell this timeshare interest to Delegate Carr, and Delegate Carr says, I'll buy your timeshare interest, and she gives me $10,000 for it, and I take the $10,000 and I go, but guess what? I didn't actually own the timeshare. It wasn't me. I was impersonating somebody else. One of the things I'd want to have available, if I go back to investigate that claim, was to look at, well, who was it? What did the person that actually showed up in your office to sign the paperwork look like, right? And so to that extent, having a copy of an ID seems like it would be helpful. In fact, when we have those cases, one of the things people want to see when our files get subpoenaed is, hey, what kind of ID did you rely on to ascertain the identity of the buyer or the seller of your real property? I don't know if it's different or not with timeshares, but it just seems to me there might be some value. Now, you guys have said you haven't had that kind of thing come up, but that's what I'm trying to understand. Would like some sort of seller impersonation investigate. Would that be something you guys would investigate if there was an accusation or something like
Yes,
that?
absolutely. And, we can go back and look and see if there's an incident that sounds similar to that. It's just trying to balance the risk of requiring a photocopy ID for every single one of these transactions, if we may need it or if it may be helpful. And as I said, over the last 10 years, we've not seen that.
Understood. All right.
Okay.
And any other questions from members of the subcommittee?
Thank you.
All right. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Anybody here in opposition? All right. Well, yeah, I appreciate, this feels like a burden to these folks. I'm not going to, also, we'll see what the subcommittee wants to do. I've got concerns, again, given the rise and we have a bill on this, which may or may not make it through this year in the regular real estate realm about trying to cut down on seller impersonation fraud and things like that. And so I'm not going to move to support it, but I will see what the will of the subcommittee is on this one. So is there a motion? All right. Thank you, Delegate Wright.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Delegate Askew.
Hey, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Mr. Chair, I have a amendment in the nature of substitute.
All right. Delegate Askew has an amendment in the nature of substitute. Can I get a motion to adopt the substitute?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. Members of the subcommittee, I think you have the substitute that was on your seats beforehand. So if everybody wants to take a second to pull that out and follow along, and Delegate Askew, if you would go ahead and present your bill as substituted.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we've seen over the past few years in our national newspapers instances that we're looking to fix and help with in this bill. We've seen racial biases that are commonplace in home appraisals, and this widens the racial wealth gap. Reduced home equity limits financing for repairs and other upkeep, which trims value from a sale. It restricts the amount of equity families can tap into for investments like education and starting a business. When the appraisal industry largely governed itself, and only 2% of appraisers identify as African American, homeowners of color are often vulnerable. Improved training of appraisers can break down some of these barriers and some of these biases in appraisal by requiring education in fair housing laws, instruction that is provided or approved by fair housing experts as a means of obtaining and maintaining an appraisal license. Virginia can address a key issue of bias in the housing market. This bill requires applicants of appraisal licensures to complete an anti-discrimination training course approved by the Fair Housing Board as part of their training to become an appraiser. This ensures that Virginia law aligns with the new appraiser qualification criteria created by the Appraisal Foundation that goes into effect on January 1st, 2026.
All right. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee for Delegate Askew?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Coiner.
My question is related to, so I carried a bill in this same area in 2022. That bill required 2 hours of continuing education in fair housing law for real estate appraisers to address this issue. So I guess I'm a little curious, picking out only one area that's currently protected by fair housing law. That bill in 2022 that did pass and become law protected every group that has experienced discrimination. So it included race, it included gender, it has a list of what's included in fair housing. So just wondering about the need for a separate section when that's been included. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Askew.
Yes. Mr. Chair, I believe we've just seen a lot of instances recently and across the country of specifically appraisals. We've seen instances where, pictures of African-American families have been on the walls, and then when they've removed those photos, the appraising of the house has gone up $100,000, $200,000. So I think specifically to have this, and if you look at the line 45 and the as amended, we just sort of look at some of these continued legacies that we're looking to fix and affect.
Delegate Coiner.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question. That the bill that was done around fair housing training for this exact reason, Have you been able to connect with the real estate appraisers to see what courses that they've developed and are now offering to address this very issue? The intent of that in 2022 was to address this very issue, and I thought they were putting together courses that met a lot of these conditions. That was the purpose of it. So again, just wondering, has it not been done since 2022?
Mr. Chair, I don't know the answer. I don't know if anybody's in the room that can speak to that. We have been working with a lot of different advocacy groups over the past year to work on this bill and get this language to where we need it. But I do see somebody that might be able to speak to it.
I do. We have somebody from Housing Opportunities Made Equal who's here who may be able to shed some light on the answer to that question. Real quick before, as you're coming up, so this, to be clear, this is a pre-licensing training course, right? So this is for applicants, not necessarily a continuing education course, but something that you have to take before your license. Is that right? In your substitute, Delegate Askew? Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Just want to make sure I had the right answer.
Yep.
Hi, Chairman. I'm Laura Dodds with Housing Opportunities Made Equal. It is for that pre-licensing requirement, which is adding on to what you carried, that the Delegate Coiner carried a few years ago for the ongoing education requirements. For a little bit more background, this past year, HUD entered into a conciliation agreement with the Appraisal Foundation for instances of appraisal bias, and one of those requirements is to update their training criteria that appraisers have to go through before getting a license. So this is making sure that our state law is consistent with that new criteria that all new appraisers entering into the training program have to start doing January 1 of 2026.
Delegate Coiner.
Mr. Chairman, question. So pre-licensing, I thought, are they not required currently to go through fair housing training in the pre-licensure?
Chairman, if I can answer the question for the delegate. It wasn't in the previous standards that the Appraisal Foundation set, and so part of the conciliation agreement is incorporating that fair housing training into the pre-licensure. And my understanding also with the amendments to the bill that it is just, I believe it struck out the anti-discrimination part and is just the fair housing, so it is capturing all of those protected classes as well. But I could have looked at
I may not be seeing the accurate version on that.
All right, so just to be clear, and these are available online, so if everybody has access to LIS, but just briefly, well, Delegate Coiner's going to have a copy of it here. But just real quick, so here are the criteria. The training shall include instruction on the legacy of segregation, unequal treatment, and the historic lack of access to opportunities in housing, unequal access to amenities and resources on the basis of race, disability, or other protected classes. 3, federal, state, and local fair housing laws. And 4, anti-bias practices. So that's the essential elements of the criteria that are mandatory in the class. Obviously, the class can go beyond that and touch on other aspects of fair housing and may need to, but because this is tailored to appraisers, and I think the goal was to tailor this to what the specific sorts of discrimination we've seen make headlines recently. I think we're down to these 4 sort of mandatory elements of the course. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any other questions from members? I don't see anybody on my request to speak, so I will open up to members of the audience. Anyone here in person wishing to speak in favor of the bill, please come forward. And as you all know, but I know we're a little bit rusty, please keep your comments brief. If somebody had said something prior to you that you just want to emphasize, you can feel free. No one will think less of you for referencing the person who spoke before and not repeating them. So go ahead.
Yes, just to state again that Housing Opportunities Made Equal supports the bill.
All right, thank you.
Erin Corman with the Realtors, we support the bill.
Christy Marrow with the Virginia Poverty Law Center, we also support the bill.
Matt Brenning, Virginia Bankers Association, we support the bill.
And Isabel McLean with Virginia Housing Alliance, we also support the bill.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Anybody who's neutral but has thoughts about the bill they want to share? We get that sometimes. All right. All right, back to the committee. We operate by motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Thomas.
Speaking to the bill.
Speaking to the bill.
I just want to commend the patron for bringing this forward. I'm a commercial real estate attorney, and we get notices throughout the country and also in Virginia of instances where African-American families have been denied generations worth of wealth from this type of practice. So I'm just very, very thankful that you're pushing the ball forward ever further. and I also have a motion at the appropriate time.
All right, anybody else wishing to speak to the measure? Delegate Price.
Thank you. And I wish to commend the patron. And just to put a finer point on the statement that you had made, because sometimes I have found that we in the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus get accused of always playing a certain card. In a 2021 study by Freddie Mac, it showed that according to the report, 12.5% of the properties in predominantly black census tract areas received appraisal value lower than the contract price, where it's only 7.4%. And then it jumps up to 15.4% in Latino areas. And so I also would like to commend the legacy of the segregation, because I know sometimes folks want to say, oh, that was in the past, but we are still living the vestiges of some of those things that happened in the past. So again, I would like to add my commendation to this bill. Thank you.
All right. Delegate Thomas, returning to you since my speaking queue is empty.
Move to report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the bill report. With substitute.
With substitute.
The clerk will open the roll. The clerk will close the roll. Your bill reports by a vote of 6 to 2. Thank you, Delegate Askew.
Subcommittee.
All right. We have a couple from Delegate Bulova, but we'll come back to those since he's also a member, sort of the committee. So Delegate Cohen, you have House Bill 1800.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. HB 1800 adds playgrounds to the definition of public accommodation. This would just make sure that it is crystal clear. We have seen instances, this was brought to me by a constituent, of some localities and school systems who do not seem to feel that public playgrounds have to be fully accessible. And so it would clarify what appears to be a gray area where it would seem that public facility would certainly apply to a public playground. But we have not seen that the case in practice.
All right. Any questions from members of the subcommittee? All right. So Delegate Cohen, you and I chatted about this a little bit on the floor earlier, but here's my issue, I guess, more than anything else. And we do this a lot when we start making lists in the code. I have no doubt that somebody somewhere is doing exactly what you say. They're making playgrounds that aren't accessible. So the problem is, hey, this is great. I don't have to sue them. I don't have to go to court. I don't have to hire a lawyer. I'll just go to the legislature. We'll add public playgrounds to the statute. That way I have something really clear that I can point at. And that seems like a good solution. The problem with that is now the next time somebody's taking a public facility and it's not being made accessible, they're going to say, well, it's not in the list. You say, well, the list isn't supposed to be exhaustive. Well, the list is pretty long. The list has got public playgrounds in there. It's got all these other things, right? And so the problem we get is that, while I appreciate you need to do it now, I'm concerned that the more we add the list, the harder it gets to make the argument that the list is not exclusive and is in fact expansive. And I know I can try and argue, section 1, the definition of include means including but not limited to. We can do all those things. But my concern generally about adding things that get very specific to make things crystal clear, which again is an admirable goal, it may have unintended consequences in other contexts. And so that's my concern about the bill. I think that public playgrounds are certainly a public facility, and I think they certainly should be covered by existing laws about accessibility. And if somebody's not doing it, I think that a judge would probably find that they need to. So at any rate, I don't know if there's a question in there or not, but that's my observation about your bill.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, if I might be able to address that.
Yep.
I guess that I would argue respectfully that currently paths of travel are referenced in the current code. In addition, though, to paths of travel, it says streets, highways, sidewalks, walkways. So while I agree that paths of travel might have ultimately been sufficient, I think that we have continued to expand the code, and I do understand that public facilities, probably to most of us, would mean any facility that is public. But I'm only able to say in practice and why this bill was brought forward as part of my very limited 15 bills was certainly that it is not being followed in practice.
Understand. Delegate Coiner.
Mr. Chairman. I would note from experience some of the same points that were raised by you, Mr. Chairman, and looking at our list of public facilities. Folks should challenge localities who are not providing that access. And, I have seen successful folks challenge those. But I also, I start to worry about if we keep adding to this list, it makes it harder, and then we keep adding things. Is it sufficient if you have access to one of the soccer fields in the park, but not the one your kid happens to be playing on, right? We've given you access to one of the fields that's in the park. We've given you access to one playground. What about all the playgrounds? Just, again, looking at the success that individuals have had challenging localities with our current code section. I was on the other end of it as a local school board, right? And families who want to be able to fully participate and see their kids and things. And I have seen them successfully challenge their rights under this code section. So I have a similar concern. I mean, no harm to it, want that access, but share some of those concerns about unintended consequences sometimes when we add things to a list.
Certainly. Mr. Chair, may I address the delegates' comments?
Yes. And then we got Delegate Price in the queue.
Sure. I am certainly understanding of that, also coming from a school board, so absolutely understand that pathway. Again, that relies on people having resources to be able to challenge these types of what I would call injustices. So certainly when we think about a free and appropriate public education, when we talk about least restrictive environment, we want to make sure that all of our students have access and are able to go play on the playground with their peers rather than sit in a classroom. Certainly that is not what I know this legislature intends. And I know that there are some folks who are here to support and speak to that as well.
All right, Delegate Price.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a bill that would ask for localities and schools to do a full assessment of the inaccessibility of a lot of things in our schools and in our public funded areas, because so many families are finding that though there may be unintended consequences, that a lot of the obstacles that they live in the unintended consequences of not being able to navigate publicly funded areas. And I can definitely understand the list. I've been here long enough to see lists get longer, but it just seems like, the importance of play, the fact that our kids, this generation, I saw a report saying the lack of experience, the lack of play, the lack of sensory, involvement, and just sitting in front of screens and all of that. We're trying to get our kids to do these things and then say, but except for. And so having experienced having family and friends that are in that category that's often left behind, would say that this bill is needed because of those experiences that I'm hoping to hear from your guests. So I just wanted to say, we have to weigh out unintended consequences of a lot of things. And sometimes at some point, if we don't start making the list longer, then we're just going to relegate those with disabilities into boxes and rooms, as has been, unfortunately, the thing of the past. So we can make the list longer, and then we can make those experiences better for the constituents that we represent.
Thank you, Delegate Price. I'm not sure I heard a question in there, but that's fine. All right, anybody in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Please come forward.
Hello, I'm Terry Morgan with the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. I want to thank Delegate Cohen for really raising and highlighting this issue. We have heard from many families, people with disabilities, not just children with disabilities, but parents who themselves have a disability and want to accompany their child to a playground or to a place to recreate with other kids, that those areas aren't accessible. And they don't really know the path to go from that point. Sometimes it's just, they leave and they try to find another place. So I recognize and I really appreciate the comments and guidance from committee members. But oftentimes families don't know what course of action to take. And a facility can sound like a building, bricks and mortar, and clarification and really highlighting that the expectation is playgrounds as well is something that we appreciate and support. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I also wanted to mention that.
Sorry, we got one more person online. Alex Sprague, you are online. Alex, you are up and you are online to speak in favor of the bill. So we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. I basically want to support this bill for reasons such as those with invisible disabilities. Like I myself have my fair share of them, and then there's also ambulatory wheelchair users, and they get so much of a bad rep because people would be like, "Oh, that person stood up, they must not need that wheelchair. They might need it for other reasons, such as passing out really easily." But I think if they should want to like clear their heads on a playground, I think we should be giving them that chance to do it. So please pass this bill as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Anyone else, anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Anyone? Nobody's online to speak in opposition to the bill. All right, so we're back to the committee. And it's been moved and seconded to the bill report. The clerk will open the roll. All right, here bill reports 6-2.
Thank you.
Lawyers can be Grinches, but we're not enough to steal Christmas here, so there you go. All right, Delegate Bulova. All right, Delegate Bulova, which one do you want to do first? We've got a couple.
Why don't we do sequentially? We'll start with House Bill 1704.
That makes it easier for everyone to keep up.
Makes it super easy.
All right, Delegate Bulova, House Bill 1704.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. This bill is a consumer protection bill. It was actually brought to me by the realtors. What it does, it makes a very small change to the resale certification that's used in transactions involving common interest communities. As part of the current resale certification, a common interest community is already required to disclose to a prospective buyer information about what kind of insurance is available. However, many purchasers don't realize that they may be responsible under those insurance policies to pay for all or part of the deductible. And so imagine you are living in a common interest community, maybe a condo, there is a roof leak or a pipe leak above, and so there's insurance, but all of a sudden you get the bill for the deductible. And so given that Virginia is a buyer beware state, what this bill does is actually just inserts language so that the proactive owner knows to check on whether they would be responsible for any or part of the deductible before they make a decision to purchase a property with a common interest community. So it's just a small transparency bill to ensure that you're prompted to go ahead and check on that and ask that kind of question. Doesn't do anything with respect to the underlying issue of reporting what the insurance is about. So my understanding is there's peace in the valley amongst the stakeholders, and I appreciate your consideration. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from members of the subcommittee for the Uber chairman? All right, anybody in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Erin Corman with the Realtors. Just want to thank the delegate for bringing this bill. Like he said, a simple statement adding to the resale certificate. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, any questions for Ms. Corman? All right, anybody else wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone in opposition? Seeing none, the committee operates by motion. It's been moved and seconded that the bill report. The clerk will open the roll. No amendments or substitutes. All right, Mr. Chairman, you're on a roll. 8-0. Your bill reports. Recommended for reporting. We'll see what they do with it at full. House Bill 1706.
Do I have to show up at full?
You still have to show up.
Okay.
The dad jokes never stop.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the next bill is House Bill 1706. This is actually a recommendation of the Housing Commission. What this bill does is it amends our buyer beware statute to advise a new home buyer or a prospective home buyer to exercise their due diligence with regard to an property's proximity to an airport, and then directs a property owner or prospective property owner to visit the Department of Aviation's website to view noise maps provided by airports and localities. Mr. Chairman, you will remember last year that there was a very famous, infamous bill that we passed.
I think it was an excellent bill.
I think it was an excellent. That's what I meant. That's what I meant to say. That's what I meant to say. But basically saying that localities could not establish their own individual disclosure requirements. It really punctuated and clarified that disclosures are meant to be done in a consistent statewide basis through the Residential Real Property Act. That ensures that we don't have a patchwork of disclosure statements and makes it much easier to be able to keep up with and enforce. So that bill passed with flying colors. Get it? Anyways. So there was still continued interest in the issue and making sure that prospective home buyers are alerted to the fact that they should consider the proximity to an airport and whether they are okay with living with the noise that comes naturally with airport operations. And so this is especially important for places like Dulles Airport, which is a very important economic hub for Northern Virginia. As well as a growing airport as well. But it's not only just a Dulles Airport issue. And so one of the things that was brought up in the Housing Commission is that we have this issue with respect to other growing regional airports, such as Leesburg or Manassas in my area, and the fact that it's not always obvious when you're even further away from an airport, the fact that flight patterns might go over your home and you still might be several miles away and you're going to have that noise. And so the issue was taken up by the Housing Commission, and this is a recommendation that came out of the Housing Commission. So in terms of the bill itself, adds a new statement on line 130. It has the usual language about making no representations or warranties with respect to airports or airport noise. I think more importantly, though, the disclosure statement directs the purchaser to the Department of Aviation's website for available aircraft noise zone maps. So it gives you an actual tangible way to check. And so it's not just a, hey, good luck, this is something you ought to consider. You actually have a place that you can go to. And then finally, it gives the Department of Aviation until July 31, 2025, in order to be able to have the website link ready. And then it directs the board of the real estate board to update their real estate disclosure statement. The reason that's such a tight timeline is that the Department of Aviation really has all the information there. And so it's just a matter of packaging it in a way. So anyways, recognize the importance of airports to our economy, but also understand that noise can affect our quality of life. This just sets standard expectations for disclosure so that people can go ahead and make informed decisions when they're making these big property decisions. So understand there's peace in the valley on this one as well, Mr. Chairman, but happy to take any questions.
Peace in the valley or peace in the skies? Or?
Peace in the sky.
All right. Any questions for the chairman? All right. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Chairman, members of the committee, Dave Albo here representing Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, which is Dulles National Airport. And I know enough not to talk a lot when we have a bill that came out of Housing Commission unanimously. But I wanted you to know that we spent about 9 months working with all the parties and getting everybody on board this version. And the key was that the Department of Aviation has a website under development. They don't need any money to do it. It'll be the kind of thing where if the airport has a noise ordinance, you'll be able to type in your address and find out what the noise is expected to be at your prospective purchase.
Got it. And I understand, before we go on with testimony, that there were a couple different versions. The one that was actually reported out unanimously from the Housing Commission isn't necessarily the one that's online, but we have a substitute to make that happen. Is that right?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. I made a rookie mistake, and I just described to you the substitute bill.
Okay, we've heard the substitute. So is there a motion to adopt the substitute? All right, so moved and properly second that we adopt the substitute that we just heard about from the chairman. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, the substitute's now before us. We've heard testimony on the substitute. We'll hear some more testimony on the substitute.
Erin Corman with the Realtors. Just want to thank all the stakeholders. We worked on this all summer. They did the bulk of the work, but they took all of our considerations into account. We appreciate that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Jonathan Freeman, representing Loudoun County. Also want to echo the sentiments. Thank you to all stakeholders, and thank you to the patron as well. We support the bill.
Thank you. All right. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill?
Seeing and hearing none, the committee operates by motion. We've got a motion to report with substitute. It's been moved to report with substitute. Is there a second? It's been seconded. So the clerk will open the roll for this motion to report with substitute. The clerk will close the roll. This bill reports 8-0. Nevertheless, Delegate Bull, I suspect you'll want to show up at full committee.
There you go.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee.
All right. So we're back to our subcommittee members' bill, which is Delegate Thomas's House Bill 1653. Feel free to present from your seat, or if you want to walk around to the dais, you're welcome to do that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As much as I love to be the center of attention, I will stay up here since I'm the last bill and people have places to go. House Bill 1653 really does away with a duplicative fee that kind of stifles business. Currently, realtors are charged licensing transfer fees if they change their primary place of business or if they change the firm which they're doing business from, but they're also charged a fee if they stay in their principal place of business and at their firm by just simply changing a branch within their principal place of business, which is a duplicative fee that kind of has a chilling effect and creates a barrier to entry for some realtors. And since we are a state that's constantly competing to be number one in business and to cut burdensome fees and regulation, this bill seeks to cut that fee to change from branch to branch while still staying in the principal place of business and also staying at the same firm. It's my hope that the bill reports.
Thank you. Any questions for Delegate Thomas? So this is essentially like a change of address, right? I mean, nothing's changing except literally the physical address where you're going. Your managing broker is going to often stay the same and all that stuff. You're just moving within one branch of your office, and Newport's treating that the same way they would if you changed brokerages completely at the moment, and this bill would stop them from doing that.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to Delegate Thomas for carrying this bill for us. He described it wonderfully, so unless anyone has any questions, thank you, and we support the bill.
Anyone else? That's it? Just Lowell? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? All right. I'm just going to take a real quick look at something. If you'll be at ease for just 1 second. All right. All right. So we've heard the testimony for and against. We're back to the committee. Is there a motion?
Move to report. Second.
So moved and seconded the bill report. As many as favor of that motion will indicate their preference on the electronic voting device. The clerk will close the roll. Bill reports by a vote of 8-0. All right. Today was an easy day. We will see you all next week. I think that completes the work of the subcommittee. The committee shall rise.